You think you own your cat. You think you decided to bring it home, feed it, buy it toys, give it a warm bed. You think that was your choice. It wasn't. Your cat made that happen. And cats have been pulling this off for 12,000 years. Here is the real story. Not the one where humans tamed cats. The one where cats looked at humans, saw an opportunity, and quietly took over without firing a single shot. Thousands of years ago, a cat was sitting alone in a desert. Nobody cared about it. Nobody was trying to pet it or domesticate it or make it part of a family. It was just a small, striped animal hunting mice in the sand. Completely alone. Completely invisible. And that was fine. Cats were built for that life. They didn't need a pack like wolves. They didn't need a herd. A cat survived entirely on its own brain, its own patience, and its own silence. But then humans did something stupid. Something that would change the entire planet. They invented farming. They stopped wandering. They built villages. They planted crops. And then, they did something that no animal had ever done before in the history of the earth. They stored food. Huge piles of grain. Enough to last through winter. And that one decision, storing food in one place, accidentally sent out the biggest invitation in history. To mice. Mice smelled the grain from miles away. They came in thousands. They chewed through walls. They destroyed reserves that entire families needed to survive. They bred faster than humans could kill them. An infestation wasn't just annoying. It was a death sentence for a village. Humans were terrified of wolves. They were afraid of bears. But the thing quietly destroying their future was a rodent the size of a fist. And sitting just outside the firelight, a cat noticed something extraordinary. Humans had somehow gathered thousands of prey animals into one tiny location. For a solitary desert hunter, a grain storage village wasn't a human settlement. It was a buffet. It was paradise. It was the greatest thing that had ever happened to a small predator in the history of the world. So the boldest cats crept closer. Not because they loved humans. Not because they wanted company. Purely because humans had accidentally built the perfect hunting ground. And cats being cats, patient, calculating, always watching, they slipped in quietly and started eating. Humans noticed the rodents were disappearing. They looked around. They saw the cats. And instead of chasing them away, they thought the same thing humans have been thinking ever since. This is useful. Let it stay. That was the deal. That was the entire contract. No training. No commands. No leash. The cat handled the mice. The humans provided the mice. Both sides got what they wanted. And the cat never had to change a single thing about itself. This is where cats completely outsmarted every other domesticated animal on the planet. Dogs were shaped by humans. Wolves that were too aggressive got pushed away. Wolves that were friendly and obedient survived. Over thousands of years, humans sculpted dogs into loyal, obedient, emotionally readable companions. Dogs learned to look at human faces. They learned to follow pointing fingers. They evolved to need us. Cats did none of that. Modern house cats are still genetically almost identical to wild desert cats. Scientists have compared them. The African wild cat. The ancestor of every cat sleeping on your sofa right now. Looks so similar to a modern house cat that if you saw one in your neighborhood, you would assume it was someone's pet. Because essentially, it is. Just one that never changed. Dogs joined humans. Cats simply moved in. And here is what makes this even more remarkable. As human civilization grew, cats grew with it. Not because humans carried them. Not because humans bred them for new purposes. Cats just quietly followed the food. Agriculture spread across the ancient world. Grain moved along trade routes. Ships carried supplies across oceans. And everywhere grain went, rats followed. And everywhere rats followed, cats followed the rats. Sailors didn't bring cats aboard ships because they loved animals. They brought cats because rats were destroying their cargo, spreading disease, and eating through the ropes that held the sails. Cats were a tool, an extremely fluffy, extremely self-sufficient tool. And so cats crossed oceans. They reached Europe. They reached Asia. They spread into every corner of the world that humans had touched. Not because anyone planned it. Not because cats were trying. Just because cats understood something instinctively that took humans thousands of years to figure out. Go where the food is. Stay where the food is. Do just enough to avoid getting thrown out. By the time humans started actually appreciating cats, really appreciating them, cats had already won. In ancient Egypt, cats went from useful pest controllers to divine beings. Families mourned dead cats. Harming a cat could get you killed. Entire temples were decorated with cat imagery. Millions of cats were mummified. Millions. For a creature that had just wandered out of the desert a few thousand years earlier. That is an astonishing level of status to achieve. And the cat didn't do anything different to earn it. It just kept being a cat. This is the part that should make you stop and think. Humans domesticated horses. We broke them. We put bits in their mouths and saddles on their backs, and spent centuries forcing them into obedience. Humans domesticated cows. We bred them into animals completely dependent on us. Humans domesticated dogs so thoroughly that most breeds cannot survive without human care. Every single domestication story in history follows the same pattern. Humans take a wild animal and remake it. They change its body. They change its behavior. They change what it needs to survive. Cat sat down and said no. They moved into human civilization without becoming dependent on it. Most feral cats can return to fully wild behavior within just a few generations. No other domesticated animal does that. A feral cow cannot survive alone. A feral dog struggles enormously. A feral cat? It just becomes what its ancestors were. It never forgot. Which means domestication, for cats, may still be incomplete after 12,000 years. They didn't become domesticated. They became comfortable. There is a difference. And cats knew the difference, even if humans never did. But here is the strangest twist in this entire story. Somewhere along the way, the relationship changed. Not for the cat. The cat's position never changed. But for humans, something shifted. We stopped seeing cats as tools. We started seeing them as companions. We started buying them food, specifically made for their nutritional needs. We started taking them to doctors. We started buying heated beds and automated litter boxes and furniture designed entirely around their comfort. We started making content about them. Millions of videos, billions of views, entire platforms powered by humans. Watching cats knock things off tables. The cat did not start any of this. The cat never asked for any of this. The cat simply existed near us. did exactly what it wanted, ignored us when it felt like it, acknowledged us when it was convenient. And somehow, that combination of independence and occasional affection turned humans completely upside down. Scientists have even discovered that cats develop specific vocalizations just for humans. Adult cats almost never meow at each other in the wild. They use meowing almost exclusively with humans, because at some point, probably thousands of years ago, a cat made a sound, and a human responded. And cats being cats, they filed that information away and kept using it. Your cat is not meowing because it has something important to say. Your cat is meowing because it learned. That noise gets you moving. You hear it. You feel something. You get up. You fill the bowl. The cat trained you. It just did it so slowly and so gently that you never noticed. And that is the real story of how cats came to live in our homes. They didn't get captured. They walked in. They walked in. They chose to stay. They didn't get shaped into loyal companions. They waited patiently while we decided to love them on our own. 12,000 years ago, a cat looked at what humans were building and thought, simply, this works for me. And humans, clever tool-making, civilization-building humans, looked at the cat and thought they were in charge. Tonight, your cat is going to sleep in the warmest spot in your house. Eat food you bought specifically for its preferences, and wake you up at exactly the time it decides you should be awake. Cats domesticated humans. We just let it happen. And somehow, we are still completely fine with that.